So in line with my videos lately that I've been doing about functions of our panels that for some reason most people don't talk about or seem to realize are even there. And today's is FC3's Auto Portrait function, which has some use. And one of the uses actually is educational. And let me explain what I mean. Let's say on manual, which you can replicate the whole idea I'm about to explain with an action that sets up frequency separation because we have to make our decision about the radius. I've mentioned before, by the way, much as we love FC3 and we think you should buy it because it's awesome and it speeds things up for everybody, if you have an action that runs frequency separation, you're in good shape in terms of the tech. But just make sure that you can pick the radius in your action. Okay, don't just choose one arbitrary radius for everything. There's a lot of opportunities you're missing out on. Okay, with that said, when you choose a higher radius within reason, we've said this before, you extract more broader texture. That's not a proper sentence. You extract broader texture into the high, all right, which then, of course, is not included in the low. You can work in between the layers. You can work on the high or on the low. And sometimes you want to preserve a broader texture. And if you use a lower radius, then as you can guess, you preserve a tighter texture. In other words, that's how much texture gets put into the high layer. Okay, so that's kind of like a rule of thumb about frequency separation, and depending on what you're trying to do, where you are in your workflow, what your image is about, whether it's a portrait or a car or a landscape or a product. I mean, there's just so many different reasons why you might use a different radius. Okay, not to mention the different blurring operators, surface blur and Gaussian. Now, all that said, in general, auto portrait mode was created to give you kind of like a happy medium, happy balance of what I recommend you use when you're just trying to get a general frequency separation setup that will work for most things for editing skin. Hence, auto portrait. So what it does is it uses some cool tech to scan for faces. It has face recognition technology. Not the scary CIA kind, but just the kind that recognizes face shapes, which I guess is similar. You know what I mean. I digress. But what does it do? It'll scan the face, determine its proportions, its XY proportions, and then calculate the radius it recommends based on some settings, the radius that it recommends on the type of portrait that it is. And the way it determines that is how big is the face relative to the rest of the frame. Okay, so we have some options here. Here's some shots of Lindsay, full length. Here's a 3/4. Her face is larger in the 3/4 relative to the size of the frame, right? So now I said there's some parameters. Let's look over here in auto portrait. We again have Gaussian, surface blur, and median, but we let it decide what it's going to do. We can choose whether we want a tighter texture preservation, something that I consider normal, or to preserve more rougher texture, right? Okay, it'll calculate that. How do we prove that? Let's just hit play. We have it on normal, median, and hit play. It's going to go through its process of scanning for the face, set up the layers for frequency separation, and it determined, if you look at the layer folder, 5 pixels. 5 pixels. That's what it determined for normal. Now, just like manual, auto portrait also allows for active reprocessing. So I can hit rough and hit play. It'll do the same scan, but now determine rough, meaning about 8 pixels, okay, for the radius. Now, what is the calculation? Well, to be honest, I don't remember. No, it's kind of a cool algorithm that figures out what is a good idea, a good happy medium, like I said. Where did I come up with these numbers? Where did I come up with these ratios and parameters? From tens of thousands of hours of editing over the last 15 years of the different frequency separation radiuses that I've used. This is not arbitrary or a guess. I have edited tens of thousands of images for so long. This comes from somewhere that I feel very confident about, and I think it'll get you started. Now, I said it's an educational thing. Why is that? Well, let's put it back on normal, hit play, and we have it on 5. Cool. Now, nothing's different. I come over here to this shot of Lindsay, normal, median, hit play. Let it set up its layers, and what do we get? We got a 5 before, now we got an 8 on normal. Why? Because it's trying to sort of match the relative texture size, right? There's only so many pixels. Now, that's the interesting thing. Okay, watch this. On normal, it picked 8. We're going to get to this black and white image in just 1 minute. But on normal, on this shot, this 3/4 shot, it picked 8. Now I'm going to go to, I'm going to delete all of this actually. Okay. And I'm going to go to image size. Instead of 6,000 pixels tall, I'm going to make it 3,000 pixels tall. And now, same settings, median and normal, hit OK. Or rather, hit play. And now we get a 4. How about that? And that's because it is calculating the proportions of the face that it finds relative to the amount of pixels that you have, and the proportions of the image and the proportions of the X, Y, and all that. So it's trying to make the best decision possible. And I mentioned again, I'm going to put it back to normal size, that is educational. Why? Because if you come to this image and it's a 5 and you like working with a 5, the next time you come to another image, you may not need to run auto portrait. You can come to manual and you have a preset of 5 and you run it because you know that worked for me last time for the same sort of relative framing. See, you're learning about what sort of, subconsciously what the different radii will do for you. This is going to come if you work consistently with like a certain kind of pixel dimension, megapixels. If you work with lots of different sizes, push the button. If you work with lots of different sized images, varying quite a bit from different cameras, from 12 megapixels to 100, that is going to vary a lot. And auto portrait will help you there too. Okay, because it'll make a reasonable decision based on my experience of doing this that could work for you. You also might determine that normal or rough, getting a 5 like over here, you don't really like it. You really wish that normal was more like a 7 or an 8. You might start determining that. You're learning because auto portrait is sort of giving you clues as to what I think works from my experience. Now, an image like this, where's the face, right? You can't see Jade's face. So if we tell FC3, go, it'll come back and say no face detected, use manual mode. Now, are you completely screwed? No, because look here. The shot of Lindsay and the shot of Jade are about the same. You're not sure of what settings to use. This shot says 5 on normal. Let's say you liked it. What should you use over here? Probably 5. Now, none of this is like absolutely black and white, A or Z, do the settings that auto portrait calculates every single time. No, no, no. But it's a good way to get a basic idea of what works best, especially if you're new to it, especially if you're new to dealing with different radii. I got to pick one. Is it radiuses or radii? I guess I got to pick one. So use FC3's auto portrait mode to learn about it, if you will, but also to, get something done for production purposes, right? Keep in mind too that there are upper and lower limits, but even on for some reason, a low res image like this, if you run it, it'll recalculate even with the layers there and it says 1 pixel because obviously it's very small and it has a low end limit as well. If it's a 500 pixel tall image, there's could be some reasons to do frequency separation, but probably not. Either way, auto portrait is there to get you something done quickly when you're not sure. Or another thing you'll figure out, I'm going to mention this as I close this video out. A lot of times close enough is fine. There's not usually a life or death difference between 5 pixels and 6 pixels when it comes to radius extraction. There just isn't. So as long as it's close-ish, you'll be fine. I've known many users of FC3 who use auto portrait almost exclusively, unless it can't find a face, right? They roll with auto portrait. It's just one less thing to think about, and they go and they get everything done they need to get done, letting FC3 make all the decisions.